This week, Tal Morgenstern from Vulcan Cyber is with us to discuss securing your CI/CD pipeline. Then Casey Smith from Thinks Canary joins us to talk about applied research and the power of sustained thinking. Finally, in the enterprise security news, we quickly explain the SVB collapse, the Silicon Valley Bank collapse. A few interesting fundings. Rapid7 acquires Minerva. Minerva who? We'll explain. GPT-4 is also new. Detect text written by AI, then produce text that can't be detected as written by an AI. The K-shaped recovery of the cybersecurity industry. Software security is more than vulnerabilities. Microsoft Outlook hacks itself. Robert Downey Jr. gets into the cybers. Reversing intoxication, all that and more on this episode of Enterprise Security Weekly.
This is a Security Weekly production for security professionals by security professionals. Please visit securityweekly.com/subscribe to subscribe to all the shows on our network. Broadcasting live from G-Unit Studios in Rhode Island, it's the show where we talk security vendors and aren't afraid to name names. It's Enterprise Security Weekly.
Welcome to Enterprise Security Weekly and happy National Everything You Do Is Right Day. That's for you, Katie. This is episode 309, recorded on Thursday, March 16th, 2023. I'm your host, Adrian Sanabria, and joining me is the Master of Marketing, the Mayor of Mayhem, Tyler Shields. How are you?
I am doing well, but why is it Katie's day? I'm the one that I think fits that statement more than her.
Well, I was saying she was. I thought she was going to like it.
I know what you meant, but it came.
She was struggling
it came across
a little bit.
Very much like that's for you. That's know-it-all, Katie day.
I'm sorry I left you out. I'm sorry I left you out, Tyler.
I'm the know-it-all here.
Yeah,
Tyler can and will talk about anything.
Yeah, whether I'm right or wrong, my wife says all the time. I say it with enough conviction that I convince everybody.
Yeah, we're not going to redo the intro though because I did that right. And everything after this point will also be done right. And that is joining us there, the Czar of Zero Trust, the Captain of Content, Katie Teitler.
Who did, in fact, just take over Tyler's segment, proving that everything I do must be right.
Exactly.
Yeah, actually, it's usually 180 degrees from that, but it's okay.
Some of these days, like I don't know who has the time to just sit around and come up with these days, but it is a thing that's written on the internet. So, it's a real thing. Yeah.
Do they have any history behind this as to why today is Everything You Do Is Right Day? Is there some impetus behind this that's interesting and exciting, or was this just nobody could think of anything better?
I did not. Every now and then I delve into them when they sound interesting. This one didn't sound all that interesting, so I didn't.
See, I think this sounds really
silly.
Interesting. Why did somebody make this up?
All right, let's see what we've got here.
Told they're wrong, or were they kind of like Tyler and just yapping?
Easy.
Nothing. National Day Calendar continues to research the origins of this right-minded kind of day. I don't know. There's nothing.
This right-minded kind of day. Interesting.
Maybe they're just making stuff up.
But it's right.
Gotta be right. It's on the internet.
Yep.
I don't know. A lot of their jokes is, are around right versus left. So I don't know. I don't know what's going on with this. But I'm going to continue to interpret as correct, as right and wrong for the rest of this episode. All right, some quick announcements here. Security Weekly listeners, Identiverse 2023 is heading to Vegas. Join the digital identity community at the Aria Resort and Casino in Las Vegas, May 30th to June 2nd. Identiverse is a must-attend annual event that brings together over 2,500 security professionals for 4 days of world-class learning, engagement, and entertainment. As a community member, you're able to receive 20% off your Identiverse 2023 tickets using code ISV23SW20. That's ISV23-SW20. Register today at securityweekly.com/Identiverse 2023. And just in case the name doesn't make it clear, this is an identity-focused conference. So everything passwordless, IAM, all that good stuff. All right, and today's topic is how to secure your CI/CD pipeline by prioritizing cyber risk management. We're excited to have Tal Morgenstern, co-founder and chief product officer, I assume that's what the CPO is for, of Vulcan Cyber with us today. Welcome, Tal.
Hi, happy to be here.
And that is chief product officer, right?
Yeah, I deal with product and company strategy.
Okay, yeah. Definitely, it's exciting stuff. My first job in product is still fairly recent. I spent the last year as the head of product for an early stage startup and really enjoyed it. So might get into some product questions here eventually at some point in the interview. But CI/CD, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, CI/CD pipeline. So we use this term all the time. We hear it all the time. We know this is a whole category. There's been the shift left push and things like that over the last couple of years. But rarely do I hear anybody kind of slow down and explain what a CI/CD pipeline is. What's the CI? What's the CD? What components go into it? What are the different processes there? So maybe we could start there and just kind of outline what we're talking about when we talk about securing a CI/CD pipeline.
Yeah, sure. So really, it's more of a dev thing than a security thing. But continuous integration is the CI part, is where developers continue to push code, usually into Git, and it constantly merges all the changes of all the developers into one build. That is usually running in some environment. It could be a staging environment or whether it's a blue-green scenario. And then CD is continuous deployment, is when you actually decide to deploy these changes into your production or testing environments. So when you talk about securing CI/CD, you're basically looking at two things. One is making sure that no malicious components actually get into your dev environment. And then the second part is that you are not actually deploying them to production.
Right. And from my experience, it seems like on the CI side, you have a lot of different environments. You could have QA and UAT. And less formally, you might have, less formal dev environments. Developers might have their own local environments on their systems before they push to, broader dev environments that everybody has access to. So I feel like it's important to understand that also, like all the different testing environments that exist on that pre-production side, because you have to understand that to be able to secure it, right?
Yeah, definitely. So I think lately it's been dubbed the supply chain or supply chain attacks. But really it starts even before that. It starts with the open source components or third-party components that your developers may use and how they actually bring them into the environment. They could bring unintentful malicious packages, or they can use vulnerable packages as part of their dev process. That's one big risk factor. And then the second thing that we kind of saw in the last year or so is issues within components that are part of the whole pipeline management. So very well known is Jenkins, which is an orchestrator tool that manages the CI/CD processes. And it had a few vulnerabilities in recent years, and those can actually compromise the whole dev pipeline.
Yeah, definitely. Any kind of automation you have there, right? And and there's so many components there involved there. I think one of the challenges is what data do you use in your dev environment? It's actually been a while, but I think Q3, Q4 last year, correct me, Tyler and Katie, if I'm wrong, but we had a bunch of privacy engineering startups that we saw that kind of specialized in turning your production data into sanitized test data for developers, or generating test data from scratch based on the format and the structure of your production data. Tyler, are you seeing a lot of adoption of tools like that, or how do most companies get their test data into their dev environments?
Yeah, so it's now actually starting. So we see more and more tools that are used to secure the pipeline itself, which is relatively a new trend. Definitely, not using production data in testing environment is it's a big no-no. So you shouldn't do that, because a lot of the times also the security is very lax in those testing environments, and it's really hard to control those. And another thing that we see is actually companies that, again, if we talk about like blue-green deployment, actually manage their testing sort of in a production environment. So you have all the safeguards of the production environment while you are testing.
Right. And I wonder, do you see any particular areas here of the CI/CD pipeline that are typically overlooked? Are there common places where, maybe people don't consider them part of the CI/CD pipeline, or, maybe there's just not good tooling there to secure those portions?
Yeah, I think that there's a lot of places where there are potential issues. Again, a lot revolving around the automation. So, like, if you break down these automation tools, it's basically a bunch of scripts that the DevOps team is writing, and you have some tools that are running these scripts. Anything can hide within these scripts, and really making sure that this is secure. I think it's still a gap. There are some companies that are trying to do something in that space, but mostly it's about awareness and making sure that there are no maldoing in those areas.
Yeah, I remember in particular, there was an NPM library or maybe a series of libraries that got compromised. And it wasn't the NPM library that got compromised. It was the NPM install script. So depending on how you grabbed your NPM libraries, you might not have been affected if you didn't run that install script. If you're just grabbing the NPM binary itself. So I thought that was interesting, because I didn't even realize NPM install scripts were a thing until that vulnerability occurred, that incident.
Yeah, that's an issue. Last year there were cases where someone injected malicious code into very popular open source projects, and it took a while until someone actually noticed that. There are numerous fake projects where people just basically do kind of a phishing thing where they create malicious projects and upload them to GitHub and try to get you to actually download those and use those components as they are the original ones.
Right, like typo squatting, right?
Yeah, typo squatting, exactly. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So it used to be SSL certificates, and now it's open source components, but it's the same deal.
Yeah, so kind of like with SolarWinds, like how do we defend against that kind of thing? How do we detect something riding on the back of a common component that we would just automatically pull into a container or something like that? It's just part of like an Ansible or a Jenkins script.
Yeah, so it starts by downloading from trusted sources, and then verifying and running security tools against those. Again, just to check for vulnerabilities. So running and downloading from trusted sources should help you avoid the typo squatting and not random. So managing a local repository that you trust and you download all the open source to there should help. And then a vulnerability scanner to check for vulnerabilities in these cases. And finally, code signing. That's used to be a big deal. Now it's kind of coming back again to making sure that there are the components are signed, and then signing your own code to make sure that nobody is actually replacing that. Is also a big part of that, making sure that the integrity of the whole chain.
Right. And then, I think there have been a few interesting incidents, one with LastPass and then another one with Circle CI, where engineers' systems are getting compromised. And then from these engineers' systems, they're able to get to, potentially to production data and customer data. And I wonder if your thoughts on that, like, is that a failure to compartmentalize what devs have access to? Because I know in a lot of cases you do see developers, like certain members of the DevOps teams, do need access to production, right?
Yeah, I think a lot of time for security teams, there's so many things to handle. I was in that seat a while ago, so you always keep the developer for last. Like you want to deal with the places where you have all the data, and then you have to deal with all your vulnerabilities or all your other issues and compliance and so on. And devs are always, because they need excessive permissions to do their work, it's very hard to try and limit them. They also kick and scream, and they're pretty good at also hacking some of the security tools,
Yes.
at least from my experience. So you try to enforce it, but then they remove it. They will remove the AV. They will circumvent any kind of defenses. So it's kind of a lost battle. When you look at the tools, it's not the dev's fault, but it is something that has been overlooked, I think, for a very long time, and it's now becoming a genuine attack vector. Definitely, yeah.
Yeah, they definitely don't like to be slowed down, and especially with 2-week sprints, and we're going to cram as many items into those sprints as possible, right? But yeah, just in general, talking about just shifting kind of to more of a product question here and mindset. How do you think when it comes to filling up those sprints? Do you track like the types of items and PRs that are going in there, between fixing bugs and introducing new features, new functionality? Is there like a ratio there that you look for, where, you realize maybe something's wrong if the ratio of bugs versus new features and things customers are asking for, or things that are on the roadmap, are kind of getting crowded out by all the bug fixes?
Yeah, definitely. So we use internally, we use Jira, and we have different issue types that helps us actually do the tracking and statistics for features, for dev technical changes, for bugs, and for security issues, by the way. And we constantly keep track on what's actually going into the sprints and what was actually done. So when we prep for a sprint, we pre-allocate when we plan. We pre-allocate the bug buffer. Like we don't know, but we plan for example, for a 20% bug buffer within the sprint. That sometimes it could get filled up when we have a bug backload, but other times it will just wait until new bugs arrive into the sprint. And same goes with security issues. So we plan for these, and then after the sprint ends, we do a retrospect and we check, plan versus actual. How many features did we complete? How many bugs did we complete? And so on. Sometimes you skew and then you course correct in the next sprint. But that's agile life.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's see. I was going to ask, with there are a lot of purpose-built tools here, and Vulcan's own product actually integrates with a lot of these tools. Does your own product, does Vulcan have a role in securing the CI/CD pipeline at all?
Yeah, so we help really organizations actually manage the whole real risk lifecycle. So we integrate with tools that scan code, cloud applications, open source packages, and so on. So we really, start from the beginning. We cater for the security team, where they can see the risk and prioritize what vulnerabilities or misconfigurations they actually wanna fix. And then another thing that we provide is actually the context, where you can see the components in production are connected to the code. So when talking about CI/CD and that, when you have a vulnerability in an open source package, once you know to what component it actually connects in production and what application is running and is it business critical or not, actually helps to prioritize the remediation. And another thing, we actually orchestrate a lot of these processes, so we can send remediation tasks to developers, open Jira tickets, and keep monitor of all of that.
Yeah. Okay. And something I've seen a lot of folks talking about and getting a little excited about lately is Salsa, which I don't know a ton about, but I know it. It seems like that's I assume it's like a framework that you use to to help understand your CI/CD pipeline and where you should be securing it. But it also almost seems like a certification type thing where there's like different levels with it, depending on how good a job you're doing with the integrity at each level, securing the different components.
Yeah, so Salsa, and there's Oscar. There's a few of these. I don't think that the industry has cracked this yet, but the concept of threat modeling, it's not new. I think what Salsa and Oscar and others are trying to do is kind of modernize the classic threat modeling into terminology that is now more up to date. There are some organizations that implement this. I don't think that the penetration is going too good. I guess people are still waiting on the sidelines to have tools that can actually enforce and help you use these frameworks and build processes around them. But yeah, it's definitely these frameworks are a step in the right direction.
Right. Some people just need a starting point, right? They need some kind of point of reference, a checklist even.
Yeah, exactly. So that what it gives you, it gives you what you should notice and kind of the different steps on that you should do during your dev processes and like the top risks and how do attackers look at it. So the interesting, by the way, Salsa is kind of the view of the defender, and then there's Oscar, which kind of try to mimics what MITRE ATT&CK is doing to give you the attacker view, and kind of using a combination of these frameworks could be very helpful.
How is Oscar spelled?
Yeah.
Is it OSCR?
An end instead of an A. Yeah.
Okay. I was not familiar with that one. Looking that one up.
It's relatively new, but yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then for those listening, Salsa is SLSA. Yeah.
Yeah. It just sounds like salsa, but it doesn't, not spelled like salsa. Yeah.
All right. Let's see. What else have we not touched on here? Secrets management, I think, is a big one. That's another thing that I spent a lot of my time investigating postmortems, when we can find details, for an attack that's occurred. And still something you see fairly commonly are plain text credentials. And, everybody thinks of that in terms of, somebody had password.docx or password.xls sitting around somewhere, which still does happen. But in developer environments, it's more of a, like a db.properties or like a JDBC file or ODBC file, or, in the case of Uber's breach last year, I think it was a plain text password in a PowerShell script that was in like a net logon folder. So how do you avoid having secrets in plain text, in scripts and things like that? Like what's the strategy there for a dev environment? Because I imagine, there are secrets that you need for all kinds of things.
Yeah, actually, it's really hard. There's a bunch of tools that help you actually manage your secrets, security tools, where you can store your secrets in encrypted format and then just kind of call them via API. Recently, I've seen more companies that trying to also use the same approach for privacy. So we talked before about kind of using maybe confidential data or private data inside testing and dev environment. So that could be useful there. But it is a big deal to actually manage secrets. Eventually, you have to work your dev environment like you work your production environment. In most production environments, you won't see passwords in plain text. They will be stored in a KMS, like an AWS KMS, for example, or HashiCorp Vault or whatever. So just deploying the same solutions in the dev environment is a viable solution.
Yeah. So, I didn't expect you to answer all these questions so well and so quickly, so I'm starting to run out. Is there anything that we haven't deployment strategies? We haven't talked about deployment strategies.
Oh, I feel I needed to be more to prep. Deployment strategies. So really,
so there's like blue, green, canary, rolling.
Yeah. So I kind of touched this lightly before. So really, there's a few approaches. Kind of let's start with like the most classic one. You deploy to a staging environment and then a pre-production or a UAT, which stands for like user acceptance testing, where you might have a limited amount of customers with access to this, or your own QA. And once they approve, you can deploy to production. The second phase, Canary, as you mentioned, is where you use a similar strategy, but you deploy to a pre-configured set of customers, which is your kind of test group, if you will, and then you gradually add more and more users. Kind of the canary and the coal mine approach, which a lot of companies use this. And third one, the blue-green approach is you always have two production environments where you can deploy. You have all your customers working on your green environment, and then you deploy a new version to the blue environment, and little by little you start moving your customers to the blue environment until no one is on the green environment, and then you can upgrade the green environment. If comparing to old days, it's like a hot cluster, if you will, right, where you can shift and load balance the users. And like I made it sound very manual, but of course there are multitude of automation tools that will help you do that, from managing the deployment to actually managing the shift and the load balancing of users. To this, I would add one more important tool that we use very often, which is feature flags. So we constantly deploy to production. We have builds that we deploy. We do integration. We do CI, and we deploy to production daily, sometimes more than once a day. But it doesn't mean that as the user, your experience keeps on changing, because when we deploy new features, we actually hide them behind something that is called a feature flag, which controls the release of all new features. So the great benefit of this approach is that the developer is actually be able to push his code, and it goes through all the processes of vetting and automated testing and manual testing and so on. But there is no impact on customers until a business owner can decide that they want to expose this feature to a customer. So that could be a product manager or a customer success or even a sales person, where they can decide and say, oh yeah, I want this new feature, I want this new upgrade, or I want this change of functionality. And they go into a feature flag management system, and very easily, without touching the code, they can turn on a feature and the production environment actually changes. So this is a great tool.
I love feature flags.
I have a question for you, Tal. I'm going to raise it up just a touch from the technical depth that you and Adrian just got into, and ask a fundamental question about security in the SDLC in a traditional, a more traditional question. For the longest time, I've heard shift left, shift left, shift left. And where that ends up being is putting it into the build cycle and maybe giving our developers some capability of securing vulnerabilities within their own code in real time somehow. My first question is shift left real? Is it something we should continue to focus on? And second of all, is the dev, when we're thinking of applying application security and development security in the dev pipeline, does it make sense to do it at build time, or should we be finding a new spot potentially around, say, the Git model, where a lot of the new companies are starting to come into play, that gives us ability to extend beyond just source code? And I'll stop there so I don't pack too many questions in one.
Yeah, so I recently heard someone refer to this as the shit left. So hope profanity is allowed here. But really,
totally
as you mentioned, okay, so you can beep it later. But really, it's I think we moved too much to the left. Developers, they want to dev, they don't want to handle security issues. And I think it's our duty as security professionals and vendors to find ways to make it easy for them. And the key is automation. We want to do this as automated as possible. So in a rainbow scenario, if we can constantly update the packages to avoid new vulnerabilities and run automated testing and give feedback to the developer, hey, listen, your package has been updated, and we might have this and that issue. Please, go and test this. That's kind of the holy grail. And by the way, a nice example of this is SaaS services. So and PaaS services. So we use Amazon, for example. So on AWS, if you use the managed database, once in a while you get alerts saying, hey, by the way, there is a new version because there is a vulnerability or a functionality upgrade to the database. We're upgrading your database version in 2 days. This is what's going to happen. Face the music. That's it. And we're not there yet when talking about organizations developing their own homebrew code. There's a lot of constraints. But I think that's the only way to actually solve it. Developers, they don't want to handle security.
Totally agree. Understand where you're coming from, but does it make sense? Because I agree with you. Like, developers just want to code. They just want to fix the bugs, write new fresh code, create new features. And I get why shift left that far doesn't seem to work. But does it make sense to shift left some of our application security controls into the Git repository as the kind of the de facto spot where I guess all choke point can occur? And I'm taking a long way of getting to the fact that the original first half of this conversation was securing the CI/CD pipeline itself, not necessarily the SDLC or the application code. And why can't we also do infrastructure as code, do Terraform, do policy as code, do security as code into Git and make all of those languages, so to speak, accessible and securable and reviewable within the Git kind of functionality? It just feels like it's the right spot to me.
Oh yeah, I definitely agree. I think that we're starting to see, tools that are able to open, pull requests, merge requests into Git with kind of, fixed suggestions. I hate the whole AI hype and so on, but eventually you need something that is able to understand the code and then find the vulnerabilities and then suggest the proper fix. And if we can have security tools that are actually pushing pull requests into Git, and these are actually reviewed as any other developer. Sorry, bless you. It's probably true.
Allergic to this shift left conversation.
So really, if we can have tools that are actually opening and creating pull requests, and then they are reviewed as part of the pipeline, going through the QA cycle, why does it matter if it's an automated machine or a developer that is actually pushing for this change? I think that the problem with this nowadays is that most testing frameworks are not mature enough. So no VP R&D would actually trust the whole automated testing process. And secondly, the production environments are not stable enough. So if more companies employ tools like Chaos Monkey and things like that, where you're sure about your redundancy and your ability and your resilience in the production, you'll have more leeway in doing these automations.
Yeah, that's go ahead, Katie. Sorry.
I was just going to ask a quick question. I mean, this is sort of an age-old question when it comes to developers and security, and we've been talking about securing the CI/CD pipeline. We know that a lot of developers don't care about security in the same way security people do. So what are some tactics or some strategies that you've seen work to get developers either more excited or at least more accepting of this process and some of these tools?
So give them drones and iPads. No, I'm joking. That actually doesn't work. Amazingly, by the way, it doesn't work. So I used to do professional services, and we were talking a lot about how to get awareness into developers, and we used to do these lectures, and if you participate, you get the prize and anything. And what you see happens is once you do the training, everybody's super excited, and there's actually like a rise in interest in security, but then it kind of dwells really fast in sort of, I think, averages around 3 months, where they completely forget about it and go back to going on with their ways. And then the common method is just do more training, kind of keep the tension high, which is not a bad idea. But I think the solution actually lies within the business owners. If you treat security, if you are a product manager or a business owner of a department, if you treat security as part of the life cycle of the application, same as you treat all your features and bugs, and you prioritize them as a business owner, that's the only way to make the developers actually care about this, because it's a risk. A bug is a risk. Not delivering a feature is a risk. The business needs to make the decision.
Yeah. Are there any sort of things you have seen not work other than the take this tool and shove it down their throat approach? Because obviously, we've been talking about DevSecOps or DevSecOps in quotes for a really long time, and it in a lot of places it hasn't quite caught on yet. And I think you can correct me, obviously, if I'm wrong, but the shoving, you need to be secure, to be secure doesn't work with anybody. So are there other things that people should be aware of when they're thinking about this? Because obviously this is a super important topic. We can't ignore it, but developers are just incentivized in different ways. They just think in different ways than security guys or girls. Sorry.
Yeah. I agree. I think it's like we're super generalizing developers. So there's a lot of flavors and types of developers. Same as you have front end and back end. Some people are more with a tendency to like the front end. Others like the back end. Other developers like working with databases. I think what I've seen working is in going to dev teams and detecting these people that have the potential to be security champions, and then really work with them within the team, give them the extra responsibility, educate them, give them the knowledge and the understanding on the risks, and they within the team, they can help and push. And when it's dev to dev, the communication is always better. So I think fostering these security champions is a good approach.
Right, birds of a feather type approach.
Yeah, I'm all about communication. It's not like forcing security to anyone doesn't work, by the way. Not devs and not regular users. They again, eventually they will find a way to circumvent this. I've never been a fan of kind of we had in one organization we had the scissor approach. You want how to take care of all the network threats. You just cut the wires. Not connected to the internet, and then it's safe. But it doesn't work like that.
Right.
Yeah,
Can I switch topics a little bit? I think we have a few minutes, Adrian. Do we have enough time to switch topics?
We do. We've got a couple minutes.
So I want to switch gears a little bit, Tal, and talk a little bit about Vulcan in particular. And in the show description, it says it talks about how Vulcan helps organizations streamline security tasks. It talks about risk management. And risk is very, very subjective, and there are things that we can pull from, CVEs, and I think on your site somewhere it talked about CSO and things like that. But what's the tabulation for risk that really works, and how do you go about making sure that it's relevant to a specific company? Because my risk tolerance isn't your risk tolerance, isn't the next person's risk tolerance, and all the data that we have and all of the repositories that we use, that's all different and it's all individual. So how do you manage that whole thing?
Yeah, wow, that's a lot to unpack. So first of all, it's about consolidating all the data and creating this risk registry, this one place where you can actually see all the risk. Then in terms of prioritization, we do think that you should look both on the vulnerabilities themselves, the temporal risk. So whether this vulnerability has a fix now, whether it has an exploit, someone has been able to exploit, someone is actually using this in a campaign or as part of a malware right now. And then, of course, how does this connect to your actual environment? So is this on an external facing asset, or is this a business critical application? So all these things are part of the Vulcan risk score. And on top of that, we have our aggregated risk, which every organization can actually create and decide on their risk tolerance and their risk threshold. And the idea is to make sure that you are achieving 100% of your security posture. So we call this the security posture rating. And we help organizations to set a target and then making sure that you are constantly above your risk threshold. It's a very different approach than kind of averaging and creating this these different statistical and numbers that don't really say a lot. And we truly believe it because you cannot fix all the vulnerabilities. There's no way to avoid all the risk. So once you have all your different risks and you're able to set your threshold and track it, you actually know if you're gaining on the risk or you're going in the wrong direction.
Yeah, I was clearing my throat. I'm very good at the awkward silences. But Tal, I think that was a perfect point to end today's discussion on. Thanks so much for this discussion. I feel like we hit so many good points talking about CI/CD security and ending on risk management there, talking about some different incidents and breaches that we've seen. This has all been great. Thank you.
Thank you. Happy to be here. Yeah.
All right. And stay tuned. When we come back, we're going to talk applied research and deception with Casey Smith from Thinkst.